Okay, good evening. My name is Amy Bach, and I am one of the founders of United Policyholders, and I serve as the executive director. So before we get started, I wanted to do a few thank yous. Tonight's topic that we're going to be covering is learning from experience, surviving the wildfire recovery process. For those of you who have not been to our workshops before, here's a little bit about United Policyholders. We are what's called a 501c3, which is a kind of a business that is doesn't have to pay taxes because we have a charitable educational purpose. We are a voice and an information resource for consumers of insurance products all across the country. We have a 27-plus year track record and expertise in wildfire recovery and what it takes to get a fair settlement with your insurance company. And along those many years, we've picked up a lot of expertise on the full spectrum of the experience that you are all going through, which of course is more than just insurance. It's how do you keep forward momentum on this very, very challenging road? Where can you get help? Who can you trust? Our organization is a place that you can trust because we don't sell anything, and we're not trying to get you to hire us or pay us anything. We are here to give you useful, time-tested strategies to keep you moving on the road to recovery. And that's why we call the program that we are bringing to you tonight the Roadmap to Recovery, because even though everyone's path is a little different, there is basically, you're trying to get from point A in the situation that you suddenly found yourself in without a house to the end of the road where you have a house again. So we're not for profit, not for sale. We're funded by donations and grants. We have an amazing volunteer corps consisting of people who have either personal or professional expertise in areas that you need to know about. Our folks who are here tonight. So our volunteers have both professional and personal expertise in disaster recovery, insurance, law, construction, and personal finance matters. So we've been doing our workshop series up here. Most of our workshops so far have been at Chico State, thanks to our local coordinator back there, Maitreya Badami, the professor at Chico State. She came to us out of the blue after your fire and said, I want to help my community, what can I do? And we said, we need somebody in your community who can help us offer our workshops and be connected with the long-term recovery group. So Maitreya is that person. We also have curated a panel for you today that's pretty special. I consider all these folks volunteers except for Curtis. So we thank Maitreya. I want to thank the Community Legal Information Center, CLIC, at Chico State. That is a resource for getting people legal information when they need it. The Rural County Representatives of California that gave us funding to get started here. Those are your county elected officials, the Butte County supervisors. Most of whom, as you may know, lost their own homes and have also been partnering with us to bring you information. We also want to thank the Campfire Long-Term Recovery Group, some of the folks that are involved in helping with housing assistance, crisis counseling, and the different. And Doug Teeter, who wasn't able to be with us tonight, but who has been a great friend. This workshop is intended to be general guidance, not legal advice. The fact that I happen to be a lawyer doesn't mean that I am now your lawyer. We're giving you as much useful information as we can, but because insurance policies are legal contracts, a lot of what we tend to touch on has a sort of a legal aspect to it, but again, we're here to give you educational information. And our speakers are volunteering their time, and we don't endorse or warrant any of the sponsors that you might see in our Find Help directory. That's a place where you can get leads to construction estimators, lawyers, public adjusters, if you need them. But again, they volunteer and they support us. So hopefully you've all been to our library. This is our free online Campfire Library. That's the URL in case you can't see it and you haven't been there, uphelp.org/campfire, one word. You'll find, you should visit there often. We put things up there as they come and are useful, and we have the calendar of upcoming events that we're involved in. You'll also find, as I said, our Find Help directory. If what you get through us makes you think, oh, I better hire some help, you can at least get started looking for trustworthy people by going into our directory. Those are people that support us, so that's a good place to start. So I've already introduced myself. I want to introduce Curtis Johnson, who is the manager of the Butte County Building Division. Curtis agreed on very short notice to come and give you a very brief overview of some considerations for either rebuilding, what do you need to think about with your lot, what do you need to think about with permits. Most of you are probably still in the decision-making phase of whether you're going to rebuild or replace your home by buying. We're going to be talking about that tonight, and Curtis will be leading us off. The other speakers that we have, I want to thank Richard and Allison Lane, who made the drive up here from where they live in the Santa Rosa area. They lost their home in the 2017 wildfire, and so they are ahead of you guys in, time-wise, but everyone walks their own path. So they're here to share some of their hard-earned lessons and wisdom and a little bit of hindsight vision with you. Neelam Salam, did I say that right? Salman, sorry. Neelam Salman, who lost her home in the 2017 Redwood Valley fire in Mendocino County, also made a pretty long drive to get here to share her perspective. The Lanes are just in the process of reconstructing their home. Neelam made the decision to replace her home by buying. So we have two different perspectives here on that. And then we also have Mike Musson, who also lost his home, and I believe his mother's home, in the 2017 North Bay fires in Santa Rosa. He's a CPA. He's a certified public accountant, so he's the kind of guy that you would hire to do your taxes if you're not doing them yourself. So I have tapped, but he doesn't need extra. So Mike has been a volunteer and done a couple of educational workshops with us focused on tax considerations, talking about income tax considerations. We're not going to be getting into that now, but certainly our hope and our plan is that we will do for your community a workshop very focused on income tax considerations and financial decision making down the road. But tonight, we're really going to try to give you some sort of broad brush perspectives. I have a series of questions I'll be asking the panel. But before we get into that, I want to give Curtis his time to give you useful information. Thanks again. You can stand, sit.
Hello there. Thank you for the introduction. My name is Curtis Johnson. I am the Building Division Manager for the Butte County Building Division. In speaking with a lot of you before we got started here, I understand many of you are from the town of Paradise, which may have similar but a little bit different regulations and processes. So maybe could I get a raise of hands of those are in the unincorporated areas, so maybe Magalia, maybe Butte Valley. I do have some handouts in the back, and I some information with you. Our department does. And so many of you are Paradise residents, and hopefully will be returning sometime in the near future. This information is going to be very similar to that in your community, but you would want to speak to the local building planning, environmental health departments for the town for specific information. With the county, development services consists of building, which I'm the manager of, planning, and code enforcement. Planning deals with the use of the land, what land use is associated with your particular zone, setbacks to property lines. All of these are applicable to you when you're rebuilding to find out how close can you maybe zoning regulations have changed over the years, but there may be an allowance for you to return your structure back to the location. Again, the town and county are slightly different, but the town does have a process as well to possibly place your new structure in the same location, even though current regulation might not allow for that. With the county planning, we're also dealing with base camps for workforce housing, dealing with log decks, all of the trucks that are coming out of the area, where are they going? They're parking on certain properties in the meantime, and there are regulations for those. Also temporary housing. I've got some information on temporary housing in the back, which would consist of you maybe using an RV, manufactured home, as a temporary dwelling on property, whether it's your own in the affected area once it's cleaned, or on a different property outside of the burn area. So the county have allowances for that as well. Specifically today, I want to touch on some building items, and I'll give you a few numbers. The county has for over 80 rebuilds so far, and we've issued approximately half of those, and we do have one that is finalized and occupied now up in the Magalia area, and another that's outside of the burn area altogether. We are also tracking people that are rebuilding outside of the burn area in unincorporated areas, just to kind of keep tabs on the pulse of the community and the trends. So we've got a nice little start to rebuilding, and we are gearing up. We're looking to hire additional staff to keep up with the workload. Our plan check for fire rebuilds, we are doing our building reviews within 10 days of submittal. So that's pretty fast. I know the town is doing it even faster from what I understand. So rest assured, both the town and the county, we are streamlining our process as best we can to get you back in your homes if that's what you are looking to do. I will say with the county, we definitely have a high expectation of plans. We want to make sure that it's a good product that your contractor or you as the owner can follow very clearly, that our inspection staff can follow very clearly to meet all codes. So we're not sacrificing in that respect, but we are speeding up the process for you. Other things related to plan need to keep in mind, or if you're located in an area that has a homeowners association, property owners association, if you have CC&Rs that you have to follow, the homeowners association, make sure that you're aware. Yes. Okay, sorry. I'm used to mics that you don't have to hold so close. So make sure that you are aware of your own HOA guidelines or Property Owners Association guidelines before you go through the expense of designing a project. Because you want to make sure that your project can be built fully and your local jurisdiction is not the enforcing agency for that. I also want to highlight fee incentive programs. The North Valley Community Foundation and Golden State Finance Authority have donated funds to the county to assist in paying for your permit fees. I know there's similar grants for the town of Paradise as well, so speak to them directly for details. But in short, those grant funds will pay for up to 50% of your permit costs. And it's up to 50% or $3,500 max. Now, one of those programs has an additional kicker that if you are an honorably discharged veteran, it would pay up to 100%. So that's a couple programs that are going right now that are helpful. We would be happy to do fee estimates for anybody. We can give rough fee estimates free of charge. If you want a detailed one for your specific property, that will be really a rock solid number. We do charge a half-hour time for that because it takes us building an actual permit to create those fees. But in short, if you're looking at, say, a manufactured home, your permit costs in the county may be about $2,000. Your grant funding could cover up to half of that. So that's an example that we're seeing a lot of. Some other information that I have is regarding codes. I'd be happy to speak with anybody in the Q&A session or afterwards about fire safe standards. So that's construction, exterior construction of the home to resist burning embers, resist flame impingement, but also fire sprinklers. So fire sprinklers are required in all new single-family dwellings that are constructed. That doesn't necessarily apply to manufactured homes. They fall under a different code, and unless your specific zoning or your subdivision requires that, then you may not have to for a manufactured home. Again, check with the town of Paradise for their regulations. If they require fire sprinklers in manufactured homes, they will let you know. Okay? One last thing I wanted to touch on that is very relevant right now is generator installations. We have PG&E that in some instances will be shutting down power in high hazard areas. So a lot of people are looking to put in generators. These can be a safety hazard in a hurry. So both the town and the county have permit requirements for the installation of generators. And we're talking the wiring, installation, connecting it to a panel. We're not talking about firing up a portable generator and running an extension cord to your freezer so that it doesn't ruin. So if you are looking to wire in a generator to your electric panel for backup power, definitely talk to the town, talk to the county. We have some safety regulations there and, of course, permit requirements. Sorry. For the county, if you're looking at a permanent type standby generator, these are typically the ones that are installed, maybe a propane line running to it from your tank. Don't lynch me. Only $600. They're a little over $600 for those. That includes all the electrical, the installation of the generator, the installation of the gas system to it, and making sure that everything's sized and installed properly. A lot of people are going for the lesser option. It may be a portable generator that you're just setting up the electrical system tied into your panel so that you can come plug in a portable generator if and when you need. So that's a simple electrical permit, which we are charging 2 hours time, which would come up to less than $300. So that's wiring in a transfer switch to make sure that you're safe, that you don't start a fire, that you don't backfeed the system and electrocute a PG&E lineman that's working. Okay. That's all I have for today, but definitely I'll be here to answer any questions that you have later.
Great. So much. Thank you, Curtis. Curtis referenced that we will be having a question and answer period after the panel, and we will include Sandy Watts, who is a UP staff member who's here. How many of you have tuned in to What's Up, our free webinars that we've been offering? Okay, so that is, we've got one coming up this week. Hang on, I'm going to go to that in a minute, and then we're going to come back. Here we go. Sandy will be and you pre-register at uphelp.org/campfire, the library that we have curated for your community. It's about an hour, Sandy? An hour. So you can or you can type in questions during the webinar. It's just another way that we are. So if there's family that relocated out of town, far away, if you can let them know about this opportunity, that's what we created it for people who cannot make the physical trek to come to one of our live workshops. To get quickly through this before we get to the question, this is our homepage for our website. You'll find a claim help library, sample letters and claim forms. This copy, you can email a very useful guidebook that written mostly people just like folks on this. These are our journals. We have some. We like to communicate that recovering from a disaster is a marathon, not a sprint. And we say this because you may feel a lot of pressure from different sources to make decisions. And we want to tell you, based on our many years of experience, that these are big decisions and you need to take your time and don't let people pressure you. Your insurance, particularly, you may have an adjuster trying to rush you, and that's a situation where you need to let them know that you are going to make good decisions and you are not going to be rushed. And there's lots of laws and regulations that protect you from being treated unfairly, and you can learn about them at our workshops or at our website. We give you the rules should be handled. We talk about what to do underinsured, which 2/3 of people are. How many of you, just to take a quick poll, how many of you think you don't have enough insurance on your dwelling to put back the house you had? So it's a stubborn, common problem, and we have lots of materials and suggestions and videos on the website to try to help. And these are just samples. Reporting. We got Dan, also a Chico State professor, of workshops that you may have missed. And Dan's got a quick turnaround. It'll be up and posted along in a couple days. And one of my favorite parts of our people seem to find very useful are the sample letters that we offer to help you be that squeaky wheel that gets paid with your insurance company. We say very often insurance is a goal to get you back where you were before your loss, but it's not going to drive itself. So a certain amount of proactivity on your part is required to get a fair shake. And we often remind people of 2 words that we think are the best strategy along the way, being politely assertive, right? Politely assertive, because your insurance adjusters are people and they have feelings, and the best way to get them to do what you want is to try to not vent and scream and yell at them even when you're feeling frustrated. And hard as that may sound, those are the we try to repeat. Okay. We have a lot of people the word survivors, wildfire survivors. We have a series written by people like these folks. Been there, done that. We've got a good publication on ALE. What can you claim as additional living expense? Things people wish they had known. If you have a teenager, you have kids, we've got a couple publications, one from the perspective of somebody whose family lost their home when she was a teenager, and some of her suggestions for things she wished her parents had done differently. Big surprise. But it's a good one. That. And then strategies for preparing your inventory, working with your contractor, if you had a partial loss, tips there. Those are some. I would just really encourage you, if you have questions, ask them during Q&A tonight, or you can dial into Sandy's webinar. And again, just stick with us, and we're here to help you as best we can. So we're going to jump in with the panel. Since we have one microphone, I'm going to ask the question. I'll start with Mike for the first one, and he can pass it to Neelam, and then we'll go down the line. Mike, is there one piece of advice or mantra that helped you keep moving forward?
I like your mantra, and that is to be patient. So the fire happened October of 17. Finalized my insurance claim, or my mother's insurance claim last week. Okay, and favorably, by the way, not in a bad way. Not to say it was fun, but it was not. It didn't turn out horribly. My personal claim may be, in fact, I got an email today, may be done today. So again, you know, it's not going to happen overnight. Yeah.
Mine took, I thought I was very tough and I could, handle this whole thing. And when I saw people settling left and right, I said they shouldn't be doing it so fast. And yet, these were the pros. I was the novice. They wore me out. And I settled. I was happy. I proposed the settlement. They agreed to everything, but I left a lot of money on the table because I thought, you know, you have to be fair. Both sides have to win. Well, they won a heck of a lot more than I did. And now that I think of it, I get mad that I settled. But I was able to sleep after that. But what I want to tell everybody here is, you know, don't settle for less than what you have coming. And they can be sweet and nice, but they're being sweet and nice because they're circling the wagons and they're trying to save everything they've got. Understand, I can understand that, but you shouldn't have to pay for that. So, you know, I was sweet, I was nice, and they were sweet and they were nice and they would not. They broke a lot of the rules and laws and everything else. They wouldn't answer. They didn't pay things in a timely manner. I mean, they did everything. They did not reveal. There was so much by omission. And I learned, the reason I'm here is because I got a lot of help out of their website, their United Policyholder website, and talking to people. And so every time you're in a group, talk to people. You learn so much from what their company is paying, and then you can go and talk to your company about it.
Thank you. And just again, follow up on something. California to protect the part of that is a lot of the time, and you have to leverage, and sometimes things don't always happen the way they should. Sometimes tell you things that are, but all you can is kind to yourself as you can. So Allison, is there one piece of advice that helped you keep moving forward through the dark times?
Well, it was hard. And I have to say that, we in Coffee Park, we really felt for you guys when we heard about this. So anyway, I think in terms of pieces of advice, it really was just about trying, and really it came from Richard, my husband, is about trying to take care of ourselves. I think it's very hard when you're being bombarded by so much. You feel so overwhelmed. You feel like everything is coming at you. Half of it you don't even understand. And I think you just feel so exhausted that the important thing that we felt was really about trying to take care of ourselves or take care of each other, because you can't, as Amy says, you can't make good decisions if you're exhausted and if you haven't eaten anything, if you're really subpar, which this situation is already putting you, at a disadvantage. And so you have to do everything you can to try to pull yourself up to run this marathon. It's really true. You really have to help yourself, because nobody else is going to do it quite as much for you as you will. Take the time to breathe, to center yourself, just so that you can then tackle all these things that are hitting you. The fire brain is what we all keep talking about, because we're all suffering from it. And so you have to try to take it easy on yourself, be kind to yourself, be patient with others, because we're all just suffering from this still. And so that's the piece of advice that we kind of have been giving to each other, and that's what I think I want to pass on to all of you, is that living through this is hard. It's really hard, and it doesn't get much easier for a long time, but you can do it. You can, but you just need to help yourself first.
There's a martial arts rule of how many people can you fight at once. And the answer is you can only fight one at a time. So when you're surrounded by mass of paper, insurance company and your contract, and the city rules and regulations, and you're going, I don't know how I'm going to read through this. Take one thing. Do that. Do that as best as you can, and then set it aside and move on to the next thing. And that's how you fight more than one person at a time. You fight one person, you dispatch them, and then you move on to the next thing. But that's not what I wanted to touch on. What I wanted to touch on is what you need to do is exactly what you are doing right now. Go to every meeting. There is so much information that you need to absorb. You can't get it all at once and at one time. So go to the UP help meetings, go to the city meetings, go to the county meetings. I went to a mind-body workshop yesterday because of this emotional component. Go to all these meetings, and I'm not a very social person, but this has brought that out in me. So what I did is right after the fire, I walked around my neighborhood and wrote down all my neighbors' addresses, and I wrote letters to them. And from them, they're learning things, and we share all that information. So you can't do this alone. We are stronger together. You really need to reach out to people. I don't know if UP has a way that like-insured people can reach out to each other.
So the question is some sort of chat room where y'all can share information. And the answer to that is no, but we are working very closely with VITA in your community, who has a listserv for State Farm people, and has opened it up to your community if you are insured with State Farm. I don't have it memorized. Okay, SR Neighbors Together.
It's Neighbors Together, NTSR, Neighbors Together, Strong and Resilient. And on that website, you will find lists of all the different insurance companies and someone who is coalescing a group where you can discuss all the vagaries of your individual insurance company. I discovered this 2 months after the fire, and I was already 6 weeks late. People for State Farm had gotten together and were sharing all of this information, and it's been a godsend in that we're still sharing information, and it's almost 2 years now. Now we're talking about how to get ALE past 2 years. All of these things are still going to come up for you. You need help from like-insured folks.
So we did, okay, hang on. So at some of our previous workshops, we did bring signs that we put up around the room. We encouraged people to try to form groups. I don't think that has happened. I don't have enough staff capacity to do that for you guys, but you can do it for yourselves either through if you use our search box and put in groups, just put in the word groups, and it'll take you to the Neighbors Together. You want to give, I think people need you to give that one more time.
It's Neighbors Together, Strong and Resilient. It used to be Neighbors Together, Santa Rosa, but it seemed like we needed more. Okay, and if you don't get it written down right now, we have the Q&A after, we have interaction time afterwards. Come up and say, give it to me one more time.
Yeah, because we do have a link to that page with there's AAA, State Farm, Farmers, there's a couple of more. But it is, even if you can't get with a group, or you're not an internet person, you're not a computer person, even just trying to, find other people in this room or in your community that are insured with your same company is incredibly useful, because you'll find that this isn't the way it should be, but this is the way it is, that people get treated differently, and you can give, and you can help each other out, because if your adjuster is saying no to you, and you find you're insured with Farmers, and your adjuster is saying, oh no, you cannot get your mileage for your extra driving that you're doing, and you find a neighbor who says that their adjuster said that they could, that just gives you a little extra leverage. It's just a way of strengthening your leverage, which is kind of a word that we use a lot, leverage, because obviously it's little you against big insurance company, little you who knew nothing before and now has had to become a very dry, kind of daunting topic. We will get to your question during Q&A. Okay, next. Mike, have you kept a diary or journal during recovery, and/or how have you stayed organized with your paperwork?
I'm a CPA, so what do you think I have?
It's like you didn't ask. That's a softball question.
I have a spreadsheet, multiple tabs, mom, us, so I've got everything. It's a one-stop shop. I probably open it 3, 4, 5 times a week. It's got telephone numbers, websites, passwords, all that kind of stuff. So I've taken a look at coverage and what they've paid me and what they need to pay me and all that kind of stuff. So again, though I'm a CPA, that's not going to be everybody, right?
So like an Excel spreadsheet.
Yeah, Excel
Okay.
spreadsheet. Is there any other kind?
I have good intentions, but then they don't come out like they should. I'm very disorganized. So I started with all these files and folders and put things properly. Then halfway through, I'm coming across papers, all kinds of papers and stuff. So no, I'm not very organized, but you have to be, as far as your bills and everything. I was organized with that. I opened a separate bank account where, all the money the insurance gave me went over there. And so then all my ALE payments went there, my expenses I paid out of that so that I could watch that. So I do keep my bank accounts very well organized. So that helped a lot. But you know what? Before I go any further, I want to say how much I feel for you, Paradise survivors. You guys have been through so much more than we all did, because you lost your whole town. And that must be so, so hard. And, I am impressed with your strength, your being here, and I wish you guys all the very, very best. And you've got a long road to go through, and you will do well.
Thank you, Neelam.
Lists. Lots of lists. I'm a big list person, and so I kind of had too many lists. There were times when I had like 3 different notepads, like, this is the contents notepad, and anytime I'd think of something, I'd write it in the contents notepad. Or I had the list that, if I woke up at 2 or 3 in the morning, I'd be like, oh, I have to remember to do this and this and this. And so now we've gotten a little more organized, and so now I have a file box. We have a file box with different folders for the contractors, for the insurance, all the different packets. So that's what I needed to do for myself, was a lot of lists.
Yeah, those portable file boxes are wonderful because you can take them anywhere you got to go. So we have a meeting with our builder, and we take our portable file box with us, and it's got all the subs, invoices, and estimates, and so it's all neat and contained. But we do separate insurance from the build. So we have a separate file box for all the insurance. Like Mike, work in finance as well, and so spreadsheets are wonderful if that's what works for you. I'm also an advocate of Quicken, which allows you to parse these individual checks. Our very first check was $807,000, and that was contents, dwelling extension. It was everything. And they don't break it down so well in the little statements that you get. And so I break it down so when the FEMA comes and they want their debris removal money, I know exactly how much it is. I don't need to keep it in separate bank accounts. I just need to keep it in separate accounts in terms of accounting. So I recommend Quicken. It really worked well for me. If that's not something that works for you, spreadsheets. Do spreadsheets. It will help you in the long run. Do it now. It's much easier than doing it later.
Okay, we're gonna ask you another one, go the other direction now. Richard, how many adjusters from the company rotated through your claim would you estimate?
7 for my dwelling, 3 for contents. Get used to it. I'm now with a contractor for State Farm. He doesn't work for State Farm. He's been hired independently. So he's even harder to negotiate because I can't say to him, let me speak to your supervisor. He's going, I don't got a supervisor, I'm a contractor. So get used to it. They will rotate them out as soon as you start feeling comfortable with them.
Okay, so there is a law, Allison, your answer is going to be the same, so there is a law in California that if your insurance company rotates more than 3 adjusters through your claim in a 6-month period, that they have to give you a written status report. Obviously, I think I helped write that law, partly because people were getting so frustrated with having to start over every time a new adjuster would come along and they would say something different. I'm not sure how, whether the law is really fixed the problem, but you do have that right to get a written report on the status of your claim if you've on your 3rd or more adjuster. How many?
That's okay. No, I only had one adjuster for one for everyday thing with the company, and they had 3 layers of people doing contents, and the contents was absolutely crazy. I mean, and they would decide I'd write sterling silver something, then I'd write silver bowl, because I'd sterling, they'd say mercury silver bowl, $6. And I'm like, no, that's $800, So this went on and on. One of the things I want to tell you, I was told years ago in another life, don't take no from someone who has no authority to say yes. And that was my adjuster. I think she was young, she was new, and it was very easy to say no. Like you say to a child, no. And then I'd come back again, and no. And then I'd come back, oh yes, we'll pay that. It was really annoying. But don't take no from that person if you think and you know that, this is right. Adjuster, my house adjuster, I was the first one he saw. 6 months later, I still didn't have a number. They started lowballing, and I was underinsured. And even with that extra, the 10% and the 20%, I was still way underinsured. But it took them 6 months, and all these big things, so many square inches of sheetrock and I don't know what sheetrock. I just know what my house was. Hollow core doors, no, they were all solid doors. Oh, engineered beams, no, I know they were not engineered. In those days, we got solid beams. So then it would go back, then come back a month later, then go back. So I had one each, but it got pretty painful.
I can say the insurance company, right?
Yeah.
So I'm a farmer's, and I'm insured by farmers. My experience has actually been okay. And again, not entirely painless, but so for my personal claim, one adjuster for building and contents, and I still have him just roughly 2 years later, right? And same ALE adjuster as well. My mother's, he and I didn't get along very well. We had some knockdown dragouts. He eventually got replaced. I'm working with his replacement still. And the same ALE gal for the whole time. I had 100% of not my extended coverage, but I had, regrettably, I'm going to hate to hear this, but I had basically my base coverage a week after the fire. So Farmers hasn't been horrible. And again, I think at least partly it's insurance company, maybe on an even keel, it's partly insurance company and partly the adjuster. And one reason my adjuster has been great is I think he gets California and the fact things are expensive, and he understands the economy a little bit. My mom's adjuster had no idea, and he just kept asking me why everything was so expensive.
Okay. How was the replacement value of your home determined, Allison and Richard? Meaning, a lot of people these days have extended replacement coverage. So if you're underinsured, the valuation of your house, you may need every dime, pretty much most people do, every dime of your coverage A and every dime of whatever extension you have. Disputes over how much should it cost to put this house back are very common. Insurance companies use lots of different ways of coming up with that valuation. Sometimes they use a computer program called Xactimate. Sometimes they use a preferred vendor. Sometimes they use the fair market value. There's lots of different approaches. How did your, disputes often is when somebody says, well, we think $300,000 to put your house back, but the you're talking to, oh no, it's really $600,000. So very common to have a pretty big gap between as is the replacement cost of putting your house back. Tell us, how did your insurance company determine the value of your home?
So we had then we had increased dwelling, and then we had dwelling extension. And that check that I told you was all mushed together in that very first check, we got all of that, 100%, because our initial adjuster went through, because I went to the and I went on Zillow and gave him pictures of our home and everything that I could possibly document that this was the picture of our home. Google Earth is another good one for aerial views of your photo, and we had a swimming pool, and that wouldn't have shown up anywhere else. So our initial adjuster gave us full 100% for those three that I mentioned, extension. And I just wanted to throw in one more thing, and that has to do with the number of. The reason we had so many contents adjusters is because I found that to be a very emotional experience, and when I ran into an adjuster being difficult, I called State Farm and I said, get me someone different or I'm going to murder this one. So be your own work with. Find send. Oh, what I said.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Neelam, how was the replacement cost of your home determined?
I told you, he kept doing all these calculations and, so many bats of whatever insulation. I didn't have a clue about that. So I did tell him, I said, you know what? Why don't you build the house for me? You've got pictures of what my house was. I know the quality of my house. You can talk to 10 people. My husband used to be a builder and a very, very good builder. So I said, you can ask people in town about the quality. I will hire my man to make sure that you don't cut corners. Build the house, I don't want the money. Well, of course they're not going to do that, So he finally came to what the value of the house, what the limits were, which, didn't cover everything, but they were trying to shortchange me on that. It took months, 6 months to get that straightened. But otherwise I forget. I met very early, I want to give this little story. Very early in the game, there was a meeting, and there was a man at the table. It was early, so I turned to him and I said, do you live in Redwood Valley? He said, no, I'm from the insurance commissioner's office. Now, I had not talked to him because I thought I had a good company, they had been good in the past, so that's this thing I hadn't talked to, big mistake. So this guy, insurance commissioner, so he started talking to me, and I said, well, how do they value contents? I had ivory. You can't replace ivory, how do they value it? No. So he said, they have ways of doing that, they go overseas, this, that, and the other, find out. Don't worry about that. So then he talked about some more. And who was your insurance? My insurance was Grange. He said, get a lawyer. And I said, now this guy was number 2 or number 3 I've got his card. So I said, oh, no, I don't need a lawyer. My company is a good company. I don't want an adversarial relationship. Talk some more. Before he finished and the meeting started, he said, get a lawyer. He was so right. I didn't get a lawyer till June or July. And the insurance still today doesn't know I had a lawyer. And right at the end, he was the one coaching me. He said, let me go and talk to them. And I said, no, let me talk to them. You tell me what. But the first thing he told me was, he said, do you have a second home? And I said, yes. He said, do you know you have contents coverage that goes from that to your house? And I said, what are you talking about? He said, bring me your policy. 10% of your second home's coverage, at least in my case, it was 10. Some people might have 50. Is in addition to your contents. I was way underinsured on my contents. I didn't know this. So after they paid me in full, I wrote, Emily, I said, I've got another $28,000 out of this policy. What are you talking about? I said, this policy, I've got some more money. It's going to take a while to calculate it. And I thought, a 5th grader can get not difficult, It's not rocket science. 2 weeks she wanted to calculate that. So they said, yes, we owe you another 20. So that just, if I never got that money. So any of you with second homes, or if you know anybody with a second home, please tell them about this. Because the insurance company certainly doesn't, And I had all my insurance with this company. So there was no excuse for them not to check what I had.
The question is, how is the replacement value of your home determined?
So Xactimate, are there any contractors in here? Does anybody know Xactimate? So if you had the mic, I'd give it to you, but they ran Xactimate on both my house and my mom's house, and the building costs were from Nebraska or something. They weren't from here, right? So it's pretty obvious. You call them on it. They came back, and it was at the max A coverage, but it didn't include the extended, right? Interestingly enough, it's like, oh, wow, that's interesting. But I sat on it because I hadn't decided whether to rebuild or replace, and so I said, okay, give me my A coverage. I'm fine. Ultimately, what we've done is we've signed a contract to rebuild, and we've got that extended coverage because obviously it cost a hell of a lot more than the base. So it was a bit strategic, but Xactimate is, it's, garbage in, garbage out, right? Yeah.
So certainly during Q&A, you'll be able to ask some questions about Xactimate. Sandy is trained and knows how to use it. And we have on our website a couple publications, Xactimate Demystified, and you can read chapter and verse, but Mike just gave you the bottom line when he said garbage in, garbage out, and he mentioned Nebraska pricing. It has default settings, and the default settings are for tract homes in the Midwest, or at least that's how it seems, because when you compare the Xactimate estimate that a rookie adjuster or even a seasoned adjuster gives you, they almost always skew low compared to what a real-life builder would do. Now, in the past, real-life builders didn't use Xactimate at all, but because the insurance industry has just adopted it, most of the companies are using it. A lot of builders have had to learn how to use it just so that when they do an estimate for a customer and the insurance company bought that, they can show them using Xactimate, they can speak that language and get the adjuster to see that the pricing that they've put is more accurate than what came out of the Xactimate software. And what we always tell people is computers are not going to build your house, a builder is going to build your house. So Xactimate estimate may look good, it's usually about half an inch thick or more, and you can see a sample on our website of what an Xactimate estimate looks like. But again, it's just a fancy-looking program.
So whatever you got, right?
Yes. Okay. So, and these days also, it didn't used to be this way. The growth and the use it this way. A lot of people, in order to get their insurance company of their dwelling to where it should be, they have to pay somebody to give them help. Part of that is because builders are in short supply, there's a high demand, and so it's not common for a builder to be willing to give you the kind of detail to support his or her estimate that the insurance company may require. And so if you need to get professional help, there are estimators that you can pay a flat fee to do a very detailed, to really describe the project, describe what would have to be done to get your house rebuilt. And we have a number of them in our Find Help directory, but you a video of a workshop that we did at Chico State a few months ago where we had 5 different estimators in the room, and people were able to go and talk to them afterwards, and all of their names and their contact information is in that video. Okay, so Allison and Richard, how was the replacement value? We already covered that one, okay. How was the replacement value of your contents determined?
I'm going to let Allison handle this one, but I wanted to say one more thing on replacement value for homes, and that's something we haven't touched on, and that is called ordinance and law, also known as code upgrades. So I said that we were fully insured for dwelling, increased dwelling, dwelling extension, but the thing that blindsided us is we only had 10% for code upgrades. And then we found out that our code upgrades were going to be in excess of $150,000. Thank you, California. Both good and bad. Sprinklers is a code upgrade. Reinforced foundations for earthquake protection is a code upgrade. Definitely worth having, but your insurance policies don't cover it completely. So when the dust settled on rebuilding our home, we don't have enough money and we are underinsured, in spite of the fact that we only owned the home for 2 years. And we insured it for what we paid for it. So that's on replacement value, but Allison will take over on contents now.
Wow, contents is, well, it's hard because you're trying to think of like everything, and it can be a little overwhelming. But what actually, and you're maybe at a better place for this now than when Amy was talking about this book. You know, when we first got this book, I didn't even look at it. I was so overwhelmed and, again, just exhausted that I was like, I can't possibly look at this. But you might be in a good place for this now, because it really does, now that I'm looking at it, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is great. It really helps you break down each room, what's in the room. You know, you can add your own specific things to it, but if you haven't looked at this, I think this might be a really good help for you. It's something that we kind of did just on our own without looking at it, but this will help you because it's already set up. So that's something that I would recommend. Do you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, it's also on the UP website, so you can download Excel spreadsheets and fill those out. But that's what Amy would have said.
That's okay. However it gets out is good. Yes, there are, as with your recovery in general, requiring you to, we've done our best at United Policyholders to get and give you for free on our website a sample of a completed inventory that one of our volunteers did for her loss in San Diego. It's incredibly detailed. We also have a blank, we have one that has some pricing, and then we have one that doesn't. But these days, a lot of people are getting waivers, or their insurance company is relaxing the requirement that they itemize. How many of you got an offer from your insurance company that they would give you 50% or 75% of your contents coverage if you, without you having to itemize, but if you wanted to get the rest, you had to? Okay, so this is something that United Policyholders gets a little bit of credit for that newer trend, but it is not law. It is, we've tried a couple times in the legislature to get a law through that, you know, obviously doing your contents, as Richard noted, it's really, it can be for a lot of people the hardest part of dealing with their claim, because it's like just opening a wound over and over, remembering your possessions that meant something that are gone. It's very, very painful for most people. And so we've pushed really hard for insurers to relax that requirement. And so there's been some improvement, but again, it's still inconsistent. And so we are still giving people the full menu of help, because even within an insurance company, sometimes there can be differences. But I will tell you this. You can find on the internet, if you can't find it at our website, you can email us at info@uphelp.org, info@uphelp.org. You can find that, for example, farmers gave North Bay 2017 North Bay fire survivors 100% of their contents money without an itemization, but yeah. But they're not doing it here, I don't think, right? They did. All state, okay. So again, it's very much, this is not all. So, okay, so we have two more people that I want to share their experiences. But I just, again, if you're not getting the waiver, don't feel bad, because a lot of It's not fair, but that's just the way it is. So again, we really recommend you go to the website and take advantage of some of the time and pain-saving strategies, suggestions, tools that we offer. And the yellow book we normally have at these workshops we will definitely bring them to the next one, has a whole of chapters at the back to just help you jog your memory. And these days, a lot of insurers are also giving people a professional, a contents person to work with them. So Neelam, how did your insurer handle your contents claim? Did they require you to itemize everything? Did they send somebody to help you? How did
I was on my own. I was out of town when this fire happened, so I came back 2 days later. Can you hear me? I can. Yes. And my insurance company called immediately. My agent, there's a check waiting for you. Didn't go for 2 days, and I went, and oh my God, what a big hoopla. These big shots from the head office were there, and they presented this check, and can we take a picture, and $80-some thousand, and picture, and can we put it on Facebook, and I don't Facebook and stuff, but they were being so nice. I said, sure, and all. Well, it was nice, and then after about a couple of months, that whole relationship started deteriorating. But anyway, so then they said, give us a list, give us a list. Okay. They had a form, item, date purchased, where purchased, how much was paid for it, what was the condition, what is the value now, what is the value to replace. I mean, like 7 things for each item. And I, like a dummy, started, filling all this out. After about several hundreds, I said, this is ridiculous. Then it went to an outfit that put it in their format. Then it went to an outfit that put the values on it, where the silver became mercury and all that stuff. Okay, I'll tell you a funny one. I had a lot of nice things. So I had some cocktail napkins, cloth ones, all embroidered. So I'd written that, 3 dozen different ones. And I said $20. Well, right now I can't replace them for $40, but I wrote 20 because that's what I paid for. Okay. They wrote back, and then there were paper napkins, the paper napkins for $5 you get. They gave $5 for the paper napkins. These they wrote 16 cents. And I'm like, why even bother? Put 0, So this is the kind of thing I was doing. Then I was getting frustrated. So I said, can I stop? And she said, no, take a break, if you're tired, but you have to do the whole thing, blah, blah. Had they valued it correctly, I would have been very close to my maximum, given them a few more items and finished it. Instead of which I had to sit and write all these hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of items. And I didn't do what my neighbor did, each Band-Aid and this thing. I didn't do all that, all the medicine. I didn't do all that. There was too much stuff. But I had pictures. I had just taken pictures a few months earlier because I had very valuable things and family things. So I was writing a narrative for my children, what things were worth, and, this goes to a museum, this donates. So, telling than anything else. So, anyway, it's all over, thank God.
So, yeah, this is a painful one because the scale of the project, and truthfully, we didn't have that much stuff. So I would feel for a contractor in a garage full of tools or something, or, we didn't even have a lot of stuff yet. The scale and scope of accumulating and walking through rooms in your mind and trying to figure out what the hell you lost and write it all down, my God, right? So I got lucky. I did. Farmers came through.
Not right away, though, right?
Oh, no, it was difficult. In fact, they even sent somebody to help us. And I'm so a little bit of editorializing. They have all this information. Do you know what I mean? So, which just frustrates the you-know-what out of me. Because what they should do is give you something that you can just check a box. I had this, and this. And they know what the values are. I mean, I got in their face on that one. I just can't understand.
Yes, and, you know, the argument that we have been bringing to the legislature time and time again, and we've come close, but the insurers, we wanted to say at least 80% gets paid without, and the insurers, you know, come in and say 30, 50. And so, you know, we're going to try again next year. But the argument that we always bring is, well, okay, they had this much, you had this much in contents coverage and everything is gone. So every bit of logic would say that you owe this household the amount of their contents coverage. That's the logic. And the insurers will say, well, we don't really process it that way. We don't price it that way. But there is a very strong logic on our side. So I think at some point this is going to change, but we're just not quite there yet. So all we can do is continue to empower each other to get through it. And there's lots of creative things you can do with if you have friends and neighbors that lost their homes and are still in the area, you can have a little pricing party where you sit around together and help each other out and have a bottle of wine or something, you know, and if somebody's good with the internet, they can look things up. Okay, so I believe Neela mentioned filing the Department of Insurance. So the California Department of Insurance is a state agency. They have Sacramento, LA, and San Francisco. We also often will bring somebody from the department to our workshop. So we had and it's free. Once it does get the attention of management at the insurance company. A lot of people are very nervous about filing a complaint because they think that the insurance company is going to treat them worse because they'll be pissed about or something like that. That really is not, I don't think that's good logic because if anything, you know, you may get a little buzz back from your adjuster. Oh, I hear you complained about me. But you know what? Too bad, because it's your right to do it, and it generally is going to help you. Now, it helps you, but the department will not be your lawyer. They will not be your advocate. So one of the things that we tell people, and you'll read in we have tips on how to be effective in complaining, is don't expect too much. Because, again, they're not going to go to bat for you on a close call. But if you have a legitimate complaint and you're not being treated well, or your insurer is delaying, or your insurer is refusing a very reasonable request that you're making, those are all things that the department can definitely help you with. But if there is a down and dirty fight over your underinsurance, there's really not that much they're going to do. And that is a lawyer issue. That is something where you want to go to a good policyholder lawyer. So I wanted to ask Richard and Allison, did you guys use the CDI at all, and how?
Right now, I'm in the middle of an RFA, request for assistance, having to do with debris removal funds, which is something that we will all have to deal with at some point. State Farm believes they have given me $54,000. I keep my Quicken and my spreadsheet, and I know they've only given me $44,000, so there's a $10,000 disagreement. I can't get State Farm to give me a spreadsheet to show me where they gave me this $54,000. They keep saying it was all in that $807,000 check we sent you. I'm going to just break it out. So I filed a request for assistance asking the Department of Insurance to get State Farm to give me a spreadsheet on what they've given me. What it does is it initially goes to your adjuster, and then the adjuster sends it up to a supervisor, and then the supervisor calls you on the phone, and that just makes me absolutely insane, because like, what's the point of having a phone conversation? That's he said, she said. The DOI will mediate, and that's what I'm pushing for. I need to get State Farm in the same room with me and a mediator, so I can say to the DOI, where is this money? Show it to me broken out in a spreadsheet. And so that's where we're at. I'm waiting for the Department of Insurance to get a little bit stronger and push forward on a mediation.
And again, it's free. So their website is insurance.ca.gov, insurance.ca.gov. They also have a toll-free number that you can call, 1-800-927-HELP. That's 1-800-927-HELP. There's no, you don't have to, you can file a complaint over the phone. You're going to have to give them details in writing, but you don't need a computer to do it. Mike, did you use CDI at all?
Not really, but I did communicate with them and telling them things they knew, which was the scale of this fire was unusual on our policies, and the insurance company's infrastructure was incapable, basically, of handling the scale of this thing. And sending adjusters from Texas wasn't helping us much, stuff like that, right? So I just wanted to make sure they heard that we're concerned, and you can't just treat this like my house burned down. They got to understand there's a scale and scope thing that's going on that just changes everything, right?
I did not. I wanted to several times, but like Amy mentioned, I was concerned that, relationships with the insurance company were not that good and it would just get worse. And I should have, but I didn't.
I do want to highlight, we're gonna get to Q&A in a couple minutes. Just again on this theme of there's not one right path and being kind to yourself. And you heard Neelam say she left money on the table, but you also heard her say, but it's over. So I think, one thing, I did not lose my house. I got into this because I'm a sort of a justice warrior, and I saw that the insurance industry really had way too much unchecked power over their customers, and I didn't think it was a healthy situation because we really do need insurance to pay in times like this, and so, checks and balances. But I do think over the many, many years I've been with people in your situation since 1991, that getting closure has a value. So, and I'm not saying it's okay to undersettle, but I'm saying it's okay to undersettle if it's not, if it's a matter of your health and it's a matter of closure, because there's an incredible toll that the limbo takes on you. And I think, you guys have heard this, you're in for the long haul and all that. But at some point, when you feel like you're really, you're out of options, it's okay to leave a little money on the table. It's not the end of the world. But before we end, I do want to remind you that there is such a thing as a policyholder attorney, and they, in California, typically, the ones that really, that's what they do, is they represent insurers against insurance companies when they're just a dispute. The good ones don't charge by the hour. They work on contingency. So you have that leverage. You always have that leverage in your back pocket if you need it. And it's just a matter of getting your mind around the idea of talking to a lawyer. I think a lot of people just hate that idea. But at the end of the day, the leverage that you may need might come from that. So it's just something to remember. Okay, so a couple more questions. Let's talk briefly about making the decision to buy or rebuild. That is a very hard decision for a lot of people. California is the only state in the country that gives you the right to collect full value from your insurance, even if you don't rebuild. Everywhere else in the country, if you really want to max out all your coverages, you must rebuild. But in California, you can replace by buying. There's a few areas that are still controversial as to whether or not the insurer can deduct land value when you buy. But generally speaking, replacing your home by buying is an option that a lot of people will pursue in a situation like this, where there's uncertainty about the infrastructure, when things are going to return to normal. Obviously, the county and the city would love you to rebuild. A lot of your neighbors would love you to rebuild. And certainly we would like your insurance to allow you to rebuild. But if you decide you want to buy a replacement home, again, you will find a lot of useful information at our website, including a publication called Buy or Rebuild. So Mike, what factors affected your decision to rebuild versus buy?
Ability to rebuild, just financial, right? Working with, we've got financing on one of those homes, so working with the bank and the escrow check and all that sort of thing. I imagine it's someone like this. I don't know what the market, I'm afraid I don't know much about Chico's market. But truth is, there wasn't a lot to buy if we were going to stay in Santa Rosa, for instance. And I know many people that ended up replacing, for instance, ended up moving to Marin or elsewhere. I mean, Seattle, right? So there's a lot of factors in there. I don't think, we were waiting, because I had a feeling that construction pricing would go down, which it actually has, surprisingly. And so it's become easier, if you will, to build. People were talking about $400, $500, $600 a square foot when the fire happened, right? We've got people in there building supposedly at $250. So it's slipped a lot, right? But supply and demand, right? It kind of makes sense. It really does. So again, if you think about rebuilding, I'm going to make one other point. I do know people that have replaced, for instance, and probably made a mistake because they didn't get what they wanted. So I wouldn't be in a hurry either, right? They get in their replacement house and think, ooh, I was in a hurry, I wanted to get someplace, and they made a mistake.
I had hired a contractor at 7:30 in the morning of the fire was what day? The 9th. That's 9th. Morning of the 9th at 7:30 in the morning, I woke him up. He didn't know there was a fire, and I hired him. I said, if I lose my house, I'd like you to build it. 3 hours later, I called him and said, my house is gone, and you've got the job. And then my insurance company decided to take 6 months. Like I told you, they had pictures, they had everything. And they had all kinds of things. The guy probably was not good at math, I don't know. Anyway, so now this contractor decides to build my neighbor's house. Of course he's going to, he can't wait for me. And I understood that, and I'm still fighting with the insurance. Anyway, finally, we got into September when I settled. And I was on my way out of the country, and my son was saying, buy a house, don't build. And I said, no, I'm building. This is my home, I've always lived in. Just one home I did. And so anyway, I was in India, and my sister says, why are you building? And I said, because that's my home. And I said, it's going to take a year. And suddenly that year clicked. That meant I've lost a year, another year, I can't travel, I can't go anywhere, I'm going to be stuck. And that was just 1 second. And I said, you know what, I'm going back to Campfire. So I bought a much smaller house. It's no dream home. It's still not a home, it's a house. It'll take a while before it becomes a home, if I live long enough. But it's a nice neighborhood, nice neighbors, The yard is manageable. I had over an acre. So, there's positives and negatives, and that's where I am. And then my neighbor, who's just finished her house and just moved in, had a lot of stresses and hassles. So, I think I ended up making the right decision for myself.
Allison, you guys decide.
Well, it's a tough decision. But one of the first things that happened was because we are in a situation where we're in a kind of a subdivision, you know, we're in Coffee Park, it's a very neighborhood-friendly community, and what happened is that because our homes were all built by the same builder, and it turns out he had lived in our house, and so Richard, like he said, went and got all the addresses of our neighbors and wrote to them saying, you know, what do you guys think about trying to get together and get our builder to rebuild the houses? And hopefully it would be cheaper because we were all doing it together. And so that kind of became this whole snowball effect of community. And even though I will totally admit that there are times when I feel like, what the heck are we doing? Well, if this is so hard, we should have just sold and moved on. We could be in a new place, we could be living our lives, instead of still in this construction, you know, ongoing progress, which is very slow. But then when I think about the fact that we have become so much closer to our neighbors, that we have become such a tight community, and even though we'd only been there for 2 years, and many of the people around us have lived there for their entire lives, we have become a part of this community. And I think that in the end will make this all worthwhile. But it's been tough, and we have gone back and forth, and especially me, I was really going back and forth in my mind, whereas Richard, I think, was a lot more like, we can do this, we'll get the community together, and you know, he's got that spirit. I'm a little more tentative, but I really think that in the end, it's the right decision for us.
Thinking about moving, thinking about buying somewhere else, what's available to you is everything that's in your policy. And insurers don't like to let you know that that code upgrade that I mentioned a little while ago, for Ordinance OL, if you choose to build somewhere else, those are funds in your policy for you to build with. So just because you're not building on the same lot and you're building somewhere else, or you're buying a new home, that ordinance and law is yours to use. So don't let your insurance company say it isn't. That's California insurance law. That's not specific to the policies. And Amy may want to address that a little more.
Thank you. Yeah, in the insurance code, I'm sure you all want to research the insurance code right away when you get home. But in section 2051.5 of the California Insurance Code, and again, if you just go on our website and type in the search box, rebuild or buy or rebuild, it'll pop up. That explains the very simple right. You don't really even need to look at it. It is very straightforward that your insurer cannot limit your right to replace your home by buying. So because it's so simple, the insurers, some insurers have tried to exploit that simplicity by saying, oh, but we don't have, that doesn't mean that we have to pay you your code upgrades, or that doesn't mean we have to give you your extended replacement if you're not actually rebuilding, right? Because you're not incurring code upgrades, you're not hitting your limits, and so you don't need that extended coverage. Well, the legislature said, nuh-uh, last year. They clarified what we had been saying anyway, which was, nuh-uh. So those things are very clear. You get your extended replacement and you get your code upgrade coverage toward the purchase of a new home. The only thing that seems to be continuing to cause some disputes is whether if you buy a replacement home, whether your insurer has the right to make a deduction for the land under the home. We are looking for people who are interested in litigating this because, honestly, because that's the only way it's going to get resolved. Because the legislature, they clarified those other two things, but they didn't clarify the land value. We feel very sure that the deduction is not legal and not fair, but there hasn't been there's not a clear law. So if you are a person who's interested in fighting on that, please do communicate with us. Very last question before Q&A. You've heard people talking about how valuable it is to be with other people who are in your situation. because it's really so unique and it's something that people who haven't been through it have a really hard time understanding. Not just the fire brain, but just the whole experience is so other, and the new normal is so odd, that people often do events and have sort of rituals in their areas and things to mark milestones. So, you know, people who start have framing parties, you know, where they invite people over, people can write on the joists, or people create, one of our volunteers, she and her neighbors formed a bunco group, and they would play bunco and try to just keep each other a little bit jolly. And, you know, another one of our volunteers organized outings for the husbands because, you know, typically sometimes men will have a harder time with, you know, showing their emotions, but it's nice. It's one of those, you know, your at some level your power got taken away from you by this tragic event, and it's hard to kind of feel again that you've got some control. So being with other people in your situation can be very healing. So I wanted to ask each of the four of you, can you share a meaningful way that you or your community has marked or celebrated a recovery milestone? So a point in the recovery or an event or something like that.
So I am a CPA, as you recall, so I'm fairly introverted and sort of antisocial. So truthfully, no. But we still have a lot of connections with the people we lived around, and my son's 15, and so you've got an expanded, you know, sort of group of people. But there isn't really a time that goes by that it isn't just sort of acknowledged, because people live in different places. It's just right out in front of you all the time, you know what I mean? But I would also say that I don't go to my high school reunion, so I'm not liable to go back and mark time here. So just wiring.
Our Redwood Valley had the 1 year celebration, not celebration, but get together. There are some monologues, they're going to put that out in print form. You know, they got together, they've done some artwork with things that were recovered from the fire. I missed it all. I told you I was on my way to India when the fire happened, canceled that. I went a year later, so I was gone when that happened. But there's been a lot of support among reaching out during that year to each other, to neighbors. You know, you helped each other. You supported each other. There was a lot. But our community, you know, unlike yours, which is all devastated, you know, the people everybody reached out to us. Friends were just amazing. You know, the support we got from people in the area was just unbelievable. So that's where I wanted to mention one thing about ALE. You know, this thing. I got a lot of money on ALE because they didn't tell me anything. They said, you know, we pay for your house. They didn't say anything. This website helped me a lot, but people said things that they, and I want to just touch on a couple of things. Water and sewer, you know, I was paying that, then I read this thing, if you had a septic tank, if you had a well, and now you've got these, they should pay for it. So I sent these bills, you know, retroactively, and they did pay. Things like health club membership, you know, I had all my equipment at home, and now I didn't have anything, and I had no room to buy anything. She'd always say, well, why don't you buy it? Emily, where am I going to put it? You know, I don't have room to put it. So this would go back and forth, and so they paid for that. Alarm system. I own my alarm system. Now, I wasn't going to buy an alarm system for this rental. So they paid to rent it, you know. And then I had to pay what I used to pay my monitoring, but they paid the lease part of it. So there was a whole lot of things they paid for. But one thing I want to say, I stayed with friends at the beginning. And I said, I want you to pay my friends. And they said, yes, they could. Now, the friends didn't want the money, and I said, you've got to take it, because otherwise I'll be locked up, insurance fraud. You've got to take this money. You can give it away, you can burn it, but you're going to take it. So they took it. They never told me that food was going to be reimbursed, while you're eating out. Then my neighbors said, oh, they're paying, they are? So, Emily, do you pay for food? Oh, yes, send me the bills, everything would be, oh, yes. So now that I think of it, I ate a lot of meals with the friends, and other friends would invite me, right? So they were not charged. But then I take the friends out for dinner, because and you spend a lot, or you bring dinner. That's not paid for, that's not reimbursed. She said, we'll pay your part, but not your friend's part. So later, after I've settled, I had this thought, and I said, any of you are staying with friends or relatives, say, I'm paying my relative $5 for breakfast, $5 for dinner, for lunch, $12, $15 for dinner. Because you feel obligated to pay these people in some way, and you're going out in your pocket and paying. Let the insurance company pay for that food you're eating. So that thought came to me much later. So do as I say, not as I do. And again, like she said, peace of mind is good. I did feel good after I settled. But I want to tell all of you, if you can, do not settle for less. Do not leave. You can leave a little money on the table. I left a whole lot of money on the table, and I shouldn't have. So don't let them weigh you out of debt. And then there was the last thing I have to
If it comes to you, you can share. Okay. Was there a meaningful way you or your community have marked a recovery milestone?
Well, at the year anniversary of the fire, there was a commemoration where Coffee Park, there's an organization called Coffee Strong, which is made up of neighbors from Coffee Park. They organized and we all came together for that night. We found a place in one of the neighborhoods to put up tables. There was some music. There was just a lot of sharing. We had what did we have there? We had the ribbons that people could write, their wishes for. They could have their keys, their old house keys, that they could attach to a piece of art that will, when Coffee Park is done, will be put up as a piece of sculpture. So there were some really lovely moments where we could all kind of come together. And even though it's not a celebration in that sense, it is kind of a celebration of our resilience and of our strength and of our commitment to each other in the neighborhood. So I thought that was really cool.
It's not my cup of tea, but the neighbors do this thing called Wine Wednesday, and that's spelled with W-H-I-N-E. And that's because nobody knows what we've gone through, what you've gone through, and it's still an individual experience. That what you've gone through is not what I've gone through. But Wine Wednesday is this opportunity for people of the neighborhood to get together and, pardon the expression, just bitch. Okay? Because you need to vent it somewhere. And I was talking to my buddy Frank, and I was going, Frank, you don't understand it. This is so hard. He said, no, I get it. But you know what you should do? And it's like, no, you don't get it if you're trying to tell me what to do. This is a really difficult time. For me, neighborhood cleanups is the kind of thing that I like to do. So about 2 months after the fire, I was out there with a scraper, scraping melted debris boxes off the ground, because I need to bring the neighborhood back, even if I have to do it myself. So neighborhood cleanups is a really great way to bring people together, working on the same cause, coming from the same place. So go out, write your neighbors a letter. It will find them resident at 3204 Oak Street. If they put in a forwarding address with the post office, it will get to them, connect with them, bring them back home, embrace them, and let's all just move on together. Let's survive.
Thank you so much. Our panel has been amazing. Survive and thrive is the goal. Revisiting can be very painful, but I think we've gotten a lot of positivity here.